In today's show, you'll hear investor perspectives on the COVID-19 impact on startup fundraising. This is Investor Perspectives. I'm the host of Investor Connect, Hall T. Martin, where we connect startups and investors for funding. It's the time of COVID-19. We're in lockdown looking to reopen the economy in the U.S. The virus has changed the way the world looks with empty streets, shuttered stores, and death counts rising. There are signs of flattening the curve, so we now look to the other side when the economy will reopen. I hope you enjoy this episode. Today we have with us Christian Kamir, Managing Partner of Sesame Capital, who has been on Investor Connect before. Great. And so what are you doing to prepare for the market after we get back open into what may be a new normal at that point?
Well, like most investment professionals, our team expect that this kind of overheated bull cycle would deflate sometime soon. And our expectation for a long time was that this will be around the period. Needless to say, we had no inclination that this will be triggered by an event like this pandemic that we're seeing, which obviously increased the financial aspects of it. But we spent the past 2.5 years refining our own investment thesis. And this lockdown has kind of triggered the burst of the stock market bubble, but it also, at the same point in time, as far as we are concerned, has magnified the shortcomings of specifically the legacy financial systems. And our focus specifically as investors is on technologies that address these inefficiencies. So any inefficiencies in value transfer, in legal and regulatory solutions, right? And overall, since we're in venture capital is largely uncorrelated with public markets. So especially for funds like us, we focus on what you could consider savings technologies. So products that reduce overhead will be in high demand, presumably in the next couple of years. And for the first time now, we'll actually go out and we'll be raising funds to double down on these technologies, which in the past we didn't really need to do. There weren't enough opportunities here to increase, but now we'll probably add about $200 million to our fund.
Do you think we'll see a change in financial regulatory in the next few years because of the COVID-19, and in what way?
Yeah, absolutely. So incidentally, we have some connections to some of the regulatory bodies, and they circulated some papers for peer review, and a lot of topics that our regulators have been working on for years at this point in time are being fast-tracked. So there's lots of different examples, but maybe the one that seems kind of most obvious, we've now have pretty exact data on what the distribution of funds from a government perspective costs, like just ACH fees, just to give you a random examples, for those COVID relief funds cost the government, so essentially us, almost $360 million. That's just ACH fees. So that's just to send money around. A lot of this release has been distributed still using checks. Cost the government, so it costs the taxpayer $3 per check. So if you send 20 million checks, it's $60 million just for paper being sent around. So needless to say, at this day and age, that shouldn't exist, right? And so I think that has brought it to the forefront of a lot of states and the federal government that these are fees that we're paying for legacy technologies that shouldn't exist at this particular point in time. So what we're seeing is new regulation in that space are being fast-tracked to allow innovative companies to contribute to solutions within government, within payment, within monitoring of people, which goes into the topic of identity, which has been lagging for a long time. And that's where we spend a lot of time on right now.
Next up is Peter Adams, Managing Partner of the Rockies Venture Fund and Pandemic Impact Fund. Great. So what are you doing to prepare for the market after the lockdown?
Well, economically, I am not an optimist, despite overall, as a person, being a huge optimist. which of course you have to be an angel and venture capital investor. But so things we're doing, of course, is increasing our investment reserves. So we're able to support companies in the long term. We're also working quite diligently to increase the number of active angel investors in our group and active limited partners in our fund so that they can fill the gaps that are left by other sorts of capital that are retreating. This is like a tsunami where you see, this big wave come out and then, it comes in and there's gaps that are going to be left. And if we don't fill those, the impact of job losses in our communities is going to be even greater. So part of what we're doing is to work with economic development agencies to mobilize their local capital to invest in local companies. Now, I don't mean things like, lifestyle companies, restaurants, hair salons, things like that, although they do need help, but that's not our area of expertise. But if we can get people to maybe pull their money from Wall Street, I don't know about you, but I've become more and more skeptical about my Wall Street portfolio, and take, a portion of that. And, this is a investment diversification strategy. You've got stocks, bonds, large cap, small cap, international. Well, you should have local too. And so the more we can do that, the more we can create that local job growth, which we know is going to be so important in every community.
Now we have Jake Rosenfeld of Correlation Ventures. So what are you doing to prepare for the market after the lockdown?
Well, the market after the lockdown, I think for us in particular, is interesting. We happen to be launching a product for advice seekers and advice givers, so typically college students and professionals in the workforce, to connect over one-to-one video chats. So for us, in terms of the world being a little bit more distributed as it comes to work and as it comes to education, and to tie the two together, the kind of category we fall into, work-based learning, we're in a good position to just continue with product development and continue building sort of our early traction accordingly. I think just holistically for the universe and for the country, and then zooming in even further for where I am in New York City, we just have to go back into it after the lockdown. Not every company can rush back to the office or their retail location. And I think, we all want to be as productive as possible. But I think what this lockdown has shown us, at least as far as the individuals that are working sort of knowledge jobs, quote unquote, and particularly folks working knowledge jobs without little kids running around the house, I think we're all starting to begin to accept this new kind of work from home centric culture. And potentially it doesn't actually, act as a stopper of productivity and collaboration. Potentially it actually fuels it. I think there's always going to be something very special about the energy collaborating in person. But I think, for folks out there looking to prepare for life and work and education after the lockdown, I think baby steps is the answer, in my opinion. I think we have to take it as it comes. The world will not resume exactly as it was pre-lockdown. I think there will be things that turn back on, but we all have to embrace change. I think that's a key component. And we're lucky to have, exposure to the startup world, because I think the startup world is all about embracing change and being open to pivots. And I think the rest of the world can learn from it.
Next is Phil Nadell, founder and managing partner of Forefront Venture Partners. Right. So suddenly there are jobs that people don't want. And so it makes sense to give that to the robotics and carry forward with the better jobs. So what are you doing to prepare for the market after the lockdown?
Well, we're continuing to invest now, and we'll continue to invest afterwards. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we are taking a pause on a few sectors until we see how things shake out and how much business returns in those sectors, specifically tourism. But we are taking a close look at companies that are providing more must-have or, as I said, mission-critical services, and sectors that are providing nice-to-have services may be less interesting to us and to others. We're seeing I think that there will be an acceleration, there already has been some acceleration of shifts that are occurring in terms of, I'll give you some examples, shifting from cash to digital payment society. That had already been going on, and I think that's now accelerated and will continue. I think that there are other examples like that, certainly with e-commerce and telehealth and remote work and learning and delivery services, all of that. And of course, then there are trickle-down effects. Like as e-commerce continues to grow, it makes digital advertising that much more important. So digital advertising grows. So there are certain trickle-down effects. So, I mean, we're trying to analyze what those trends are and will be and try to stay ahead of that curve a little bit and anticipate those shifts both towards certain sectors and away from other sectors, and just be cognizant of that. And again, focus on, which we've sort of always done, but focus on services and products that are really solving a significant pain point as opposed to just nice to have. And I guess one other thing on that would be that we've always been focused on companies having sufficient runway. And I think that that becomes even more important in an uncertain environment, an environment that's likely to be tighter in terms of venture funding, probably a recessionary environment. So I think a prolonged, sufficient runway becomes even more important.
And next up is Steve Shapiro, Managing Partner of eHealth Ventures. Well, very good. So what are you doing to prepare for the market after the lockdown?
Well, it's certainly going to be done in phases. So the first thing, we want to follow the local protocols for when people are in person and what we do. And we're international, so it may vary by company. We're going to see much more cooperation between companies. And like I mentioned, between governments, domestically and internationally. I think that's going to be a positive thing. As I mentioned earlier, we see the digital health space growing at warp speeds. It's really going to increase. So we see this as a tremendous opportunity in the space that we're in. Things that we're going to look at more. One big thing is going to hit is with contract tracing technology. And that's very interesting, where countries like Israel, South Korea, Singapore, they were the first they were least affected to date from the coronavirus. And one of the reasons is they implemented contact tracing technology. Maybe their tests weren't as much as we are having in the US, but because they have the technology, if someone gets it and is positive, they can track where that person had been in the past week and who was around them and notify the people that were near them or in contact with them. That's going to be a big area, not just for coronavirus, but it's going to be interesting. And in this country, people are resistant to let that information out. But in the countries that have allowed it, it's made a positive difference. Mm-hmm. So that's an area. We're also in digital diagnostics. This is very important with COVID-19 and with other things, to be able to diagnose things remotely. You want to catch it right at the beginning and to use technology to do it. Using big data to understand population health and where there are areas that have to be attacked. So part of our new investment thesis, has to be to look at where the world is going in the healthcare space and how can we find these companies that will match where we're going to end up in the healthcare space. And these are some examples, with the telehealth, with population health, with digital diagnostics, and to really identify the companies that will have the technology that the world will need, post-coronavirus.
My next guest is Eileen Chan of 13 Ventures. Great. And so the next question is, what are you doing to prepare for the market after the lockdown?
Yeah. So the reopening will happen in stages. And I think the end of lockdown could be different for different businesses. Companies have to ensure that they have enough money to resume their operations. And the new normal could also mean having the financial capacity for a new way of operation and marketing. As an early stage growth capital fund, so 13 Ventures have been working closely with our portfolio companies to make sure that they stay on track with the support they need to flourish through and after the pandemic. We help to look at business and ask, how long does it take for the product to turn into cash in the pocket? So we want to support a quick turnaround and continue to employ the strategy to do that. The questions that we have been helping our portfolio companies to answer, do we have to develop new products? And do we have to give up some existing ones because they will no longer fit what the market would be looking for through and after the crisis? One thing we see in the lockdown is that oftentimes the demand is still exists. However, the supply is not catching up. And this has everything to do with the supply chain, which is a call to portfolio companies and basically all other companies to review the production channels. They need to ensure that they are flexible and secure so that the business will not be disrupted easily. And we're also reevaluating what is a viable investment in this climate and how to enhance our portfolio. In fact, we are on a full-on search for a new non-cyclical business to invest in. And it's lucky that we have come across some good options. We want to continue to invest in companies that are different and with a product demand that will not go away. Some startups were launched with an adventurous concept, but the products in the system are fragile. So once again, the theory is that great products will win by empowering people and by providing them with much needed security and comfort. Consumers had experienced a really traumatic period and are waiting for innovation to improve their lives.
Thank you for joining us today. As always, be sure to leave a review, subscribe to this podcast, and share it with others. Let's go start up something today. Halti Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.